The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus said to his disciples, "Gird your loins and light your lamps, and be like servants who await their master's return from a wedding, ready to open immediately when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds vigilant on his arrival. Amen, I say to you, he will gird himself, have the servants recline at table, and proceed to wait on them. And should he come in the second or third watch and find them prepared in this way, blessed are those servants. Be sure of this, if the master of the house had known the hour when the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
While I was visiting a parishioner some years ago in the hospital, a doctor came into the same room and he was seeing the other patient on the other side of the room. And I noticed that the doctor was wearing on his lapel a pin, and this is what it said: "Let go and let God." And I was really impressed with that, and I couldn't help but tell him, I said, "Doctor, I have to tell you that I'm very impressed with the fact that you would wear a pin like that on your lapel for everybody to see, because some people may take offense at that. You know, some people think you're forcing religion down their throats." And I said, I think I like the message, and I applaud you for having the courage to wear that where people can see it. And he said to me, "Father, the medical profession can only do so much." He says, when it comes to healing people, we do what we can as physicians, but there comes a point after we have done what we can medically, we just have to have faith, and we have to leave the rest in God's hands. Now, that was an unexpected blessing that God gave to me. I thought I was going to come and console this patient who wanted to see me in the hospital. And instead, it reminded me of the way Jesus taught us in the gospel this morning. The Son of Man will come when you least expect. And Jesus came to me in a way that I least expected through that doctor. He said, you do what you can in any given situation that you find yourself in, and then you have to leave the rest in God's hands. What does that mean? It means don't worry about how things are going to turn out. When you do what you can do, you leave the rest up to God. Now, I do believe that, and I preach that. But I have to tell you, that time in my life, I was going through a struggle as a priest. And God put that doctor in my life to remind me what I forgot. You do what you can, and God is happy to see, even if you think I'm not doing well. But it's the best I can do, and God knows that. And if you know it, then we have to believe that God does. And then you leave the rest up to God. It's a great way to live, isn't it? Yeah, and I try to remind myself, because you know when I forget to do that? When I'm worrying. I'm worrying about, how is this going to turn out? What if that doesn't work? What if that does happen, etc. And then Joey, God is saying to me, he calls me Joey. You're forgetting. You do what you can, and I see your heart. I know what you want to do. You're trying to do. You do your best. Then you have to leave the rest up to me. That part for us is tough, especially if we are control freaks. We know anxiety does nothing. We know it in here, but in here we don't. Because when we worry, why are we doing it? What good is it doing? Matter of fact, it's destructive of our physical and mental health. But we can't help it. But God knows. God understands us. If you want to know what original sin is, you know, you can read in the Catechism of the original sin. One of the effects of original sin is the man in the gospel, I do believe, help my unbelief. That's why it's in there. For me and for you. We believe. If you didn't believe, you would be still sleeping. You'd be taking Sunday off. But you're here because you believe. And even if we're struggling with our faith, we say, I do believe, help my unbelief. There are times when I worry, when I'm anxious, when I lose sleep, when I don't trust you. But God understands his children. You remember the story in the gospel where Jairus, who was a temple official, his daughter was very ill, and they summoned Jesus to heal her. And he was worried. He said, if you can, he was a pagan, and he said, well, if you can come to my home. And Jesus saw the look on his face. What did he tell him? Jairus, do not be afraid. Just have faith. Those words were written down for you and me. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. In today's gospel, we heard Jesus say, you must be prepared for an hour you do not expect the Son of Man will come. What does that mean? It means that God can break through any of our limited expectations, any of our limitations, any of our weakness of faith. God can break through that and surprise us with new possibilities concerning any situation that we're dealing with. God will show up in a person like that doctor I told you about. I needed to hear that. And God gave me that gift. Sometimes God puts people in your day. I'm sure you've experienced that. Somebody will come into your life. Somebody will say something to you, like that doctor. He didn't say it. His lapel said it. His button on the lapel. Sometimes in a situation you'll say, that's what God means. But it's unexpected, and that's what Jesus says, keep your eyes open, because God will come to you when you least expect it. As I said, back then in that hospital visit, I thought I was going to come to comfort the parishioner, and in walks this doctor, unexpectedly. He wasn't trying to preach to me or impress me. But God knew that I needed to see the button on his lapel, the pen, and to hear his words. His belief. We do what we can, Father, as physicians, and we leave the rest up to God. And I took that. I do what I can as a priest. You do what you can as a parent, grandparent, whomever, whatever your vocation is. You do what you can on your job, with your family, etc. Do what you can for them. Do what you can in a situation. And then you say to God, this is the best I can do. This is all I can do. And God says, I'm happy with it. Put it in my hands. That's the hard part for us, to put it in his hands and not to worry about it. Jesus tells us to open our minds and our hearts to God's coming in ways and at times and in situations that we either don't expect it or don't believe it's going to happen. Isn't it true that sometimes out of exasperation, when we're going through something very painful in our lives, nothing seems to be getting better, sometimes we feel that God, for reasons we don't understand, has forgotten about us. We think that, well, there are how many billions of people on the earth, and God can't know what little old me is going through, even though I'm suffering. That's not true. I heard a priest say one time in a homily that God knows and focuses in on you if you were the only person in the world, but God can do that. So God does know. But then we say, then why doesn't God seem to be answering my prayers? He doesn't seem to do anything to help me. My situation is dragging on and on. And it's especially trying to our faith when we hit a dead end in our lives, or a problem that seems to have no solution. But God will always give us new hope, and God will always be there even though he seems hidden or unconcerned. Sometimes we think, I can't go on anymore, I can't take this anymore, or I don't want to go on anymore. Some people give up on prayer, understandably. In my 47 years being a priest, I've seen people who have stopped going to church. But you know what? God understands. God knows. So God wants to always give us new inspiration and new courage to persevere. He tells us, Jesus does in this morning's gospel, light your lamps. What does he mean? He's talking about lighting the lamp of faith. A flame on a candle and on the altar is a flame of faith. It's a light that guides us in the darkness. Jesus is speaking about that light your lamp of faith. And that can help us in times of darkness, in times of doubt, pain, or fear. Faith and not fear is to be our guiding light. Faith and not fear enables us to live with a constant attitude of preparedness and openness, ready to recognize and welcome Jesus anytime and in any person and in any situation he chooses to come to us. Faith and not fear keeps us attentive also to the responsibilities and to the care that we owe to our sisters and brothers who need our help. So here at this Eucharist, we try to be like the servants in the gospel who wait for their master's return. Here at the Lord's table, we pause from our normal activities, what we would normally be doing, and we have made the time to come to God's house, to be together. And we want to be inspired because we need God's inspiration. We listen to the readings, we listen to them and take them into our hearts. We need that encouragement. And when we come up for communion, we remember that God is feeding us with the risen body and blood of his Son. That is nourishment for our souls. We try to be ready for him when he comes to us in the most unexpected and surprising ways. We ask the Lord to strengthen our faith and to please dispel our fears. I'd like to share with you some words from St. Francis de Sales about that. This is what he encouraged in one of the homilies he gave back in the 16th century. This is what he said to his people, and I'd like his words to ring out because they've rung in my heart, and I want them to ring out in your hearts as well. This is what he said. Have no fear for what tomorrow may bring. The same loving God who cares for you today will take care of you tomorrow and every day. God will either shield you from suffering or give you unfailing strength to bear it. So be at peace then, and put aside all anxious thoughts.